My name is Jim Tweedy. I'm a native of Longview, and I'm going to talk about wartime experiences during World War II. COWLITZ County was a backwater, if you will. Our life centered around the two big sawmills and Longview Fiber, Weyerhaeuser Pulp Mill. We were all aware of what was going on in Europe. The war started in September of 1939. We couldn't escape the news that came through, and not too many people thought that we would get involved, but as consequences turned out, we were involved very deeply. We knew there was a large presence at Fort Lewis, but so few of us traveled outside of the area that it wasn't until 1940, when the Army had maneuvers in this part of the country, that we really understood what the Army was about. And at that time, there were thousands of soldiers in all of western Washington, northwest Oregon. And so it was quite an experience to see them everywhere. But until the war actually started, that was really probably our only association with those type events. On Pearl Harbor Day, I was actually a caddy on the Longview Country Club golf course, and when the news came that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, everybody disappeared. And from then on, we were deeply involved. We had blackouts, we had Army guards at the bridges and other sensitive locations. We began collecting rubber, tires, aluminum cans, metal for the war effort. We had a little later on, we had food, gas, shoe, and clothing rations that we were limited on what we could buy. Everything was pointed towards the war effort. We were, I think, very concerned, afraid, perhaps, about what the Japanese might do. We were not prepared as a country for defense of any sizable amount, and as a consequence, there was a lot of concern locally about what the Japanese might do, and we were used to the Japanese because Japanese were purchasers of our lumber. Their ships would be at the docks weekly, so we knew, we knew what they looked like, but we hadn't any idea of what they were doing or what they were going to do. Also, the news that we were reading and hearing was all bad, because the Japanese made rapid advances all throughout the Pacific. So as a consequence, it was gloom and doom for a good while. With all of the people involved in the draft, the mills were shorthanded. They couldn't get enough loggers. So as a consequence, the U.S. government lowered the working age from 18 to 16. As a consequence, all of us that were still in school, that were 16 and older, were able to work in the local mills. I personally worked during the summertime for the U.S. Forest Service as a fire suppression crew or other jobs in the Columbia Forest. In the wintertime, I worked at the Weyerhaeuser Pulp Mill on the weekends and holidays. I had classmates that worked 4-hour shifts at Long Bell, others that worked full shifts at Longview Fiber. As a consequence, we entered the industrial world an awful lot earlier than perhaps we normally would. At the same time, women were hired to work the mills, and the contribution was significant. Long Bell employed 38 Japanese in their green chain, and we had Japanese students in Longview, several of my age and quite a few younger, and we were around them. They were pleasant as far as we could tell, and all of a sudden one day they were gone. The president had issued an executive order confining them to camps in remote areas, and they disappeared from what we could see. There were 2 families in Kelso, and of all the Japanese that lived in Longview at the time, only 1 family came back. I think what they did was awful. You know, we had no proof at all of any involvement of the Japanese being spies or having radio contact with Japan or anything, and it was a national hysteria, and what we did to those people was just unconscionable. But at the same time, we were at war, and certainly expediency probably overtook good judgment.